I, a 27-year-old woman, have been married to my 29-year-old husband for a year. Recently, he brought home a woman who appeared to be around our age, introducing her as his estranged sister. This revelation was surprising considering he had never mentioned having a sister before. According to him, she had been expelled from the family approximately 5 years ago after running away with a man twice her age. Since we didn't know each other at that time, there was no way for me to verify this information. He explained that his family had erased all traces of her existence, never bringing her up again. Despite finding the story somewhat implausible, akin to a movie plot, I hesitated to question him further when he reacted defensively and became upset about any suggestion of dishonesty. As days passed, I began to notice peculiarities that raised suspicions. There were instances when they would suddenly stop whispering and act normally as soon as I entered a room. Furthermore, his supposed sister would often sit exceptionally close, occasionally resting her head on his lap. Although I found these behaviors odd, I chose not to escalate the situation. Deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. I felt compelled to address my concerns, but my attempts were thwarted. My husband forbade me from discussing the matter with his family, leaving me with no reliable source of information. Seeking guidance from my parents was not an option, as they would disapprove and might involve his family. Because of several red flags, I recognized the need to uncover the truth independently. The close relationship between my husband and the woman he claimed to be his sister raised suspicions, but I hesitated to confront him for fear of upsetting him and jeopardizing communication. Fearing that he might shut me out if I directly approached him, I turned to the one person in his family I trusted, his first cousin, who coincidentally was also one of my closest friends from high school. Summoning courage, I approached her to inquire about the truth behind the alleged sister. To my astonishment, she disclosed that my husband was, in fact, the only child of his parents. I met her in person, witnessing her genuine surprise and concern upon learning about the woman he had brought home. She confirmed that he had no sister, and when I showed her a picture of the supposed sibling, she denied ever seeing her before. This revelation was distressing, prompting me to delve deeper into the matter. Despite the challenges of gaining access to the woman's belongings, as she was always vigilant in guarding her possessions, I seized an opportunity when she went for a shower. After some meticulous searching, I discovered her passport, which identified her as a 32-year-old female with a name that sounded oddly familiar. It became evident that my husband had been dishonest about her identity, as the name on her passport did not align with the one he had provided. I captured a photo of the passport as evidence and left her belongings untouched. Armed with proof, I decided it was time to confront my husband. I had been cohabiting with the woman, whom I'll refer to as Rita, due to a lack of trust between us. My husband seemed unperturbed by my decision, thinking she could use some company, even though our interactions were minimal. Upon my husband's return home yesterday evening, I seized the moment to confront him. I pulled him aside, revealing the incriminating pictures of Rita's passport. I explained that my investigation had uncovered the truth. She was not his sister. I demanded that he come clean immediately. His immediate anger and defensive reactions only intensified my suspicions, fueling a heated argument. Rita, taken aback, intruded into the room as the commotion escalated. My husband wasted no time informing her of the nature of our dispute. In response, she unleashed a torrent of accusations, berating me for invading her privacy. Her audacity baffled me, and I scoffed at her assertion. This further incited her, escalating the confrontation. Faced with the escalating tension, my husband declared his departure, asserting he would return when I respected his boundaries. The entire situation struck me as absurd, and I was at a loss for how to react. Little did I know that more unpleasant surprises awaited. Despite my initial inclination to let him leave without objection, my plans took an unexpected turn. Last night, fueled by frustration and contemplation of filing for divorce, I received a call from one of my dad's neighbors. They suggested meeting for lunch today, an opportunity that coincided with my proximity to their location. I found myself in a state of confusion as my neighbor mentioned my recent visits to my dad's house, which I hadn't done in the past 2 weeks. Clarifying that I hadn't been there, she shared her observation of my husband's late-night arrival with a woman, assuming it was me. I chose not to delve into explanations with my neighbor at that moment, focusing more on understanding why my husband was staying at my father's house during our ongoing dispute. Intrigued by this unexpected development, I immediately called my father for an explanation. Initially hesitant, he eventually succumbed to the pressure when I threatened to cut him out of my life if he didn't disclose the truth. He then revealed the details of the situation. The woman, whom my husband had brought home, was none other than his boss's daughter. A year ago, my father played a pivotal role in securing a job for my husband in the same company where he worked. This decision was based on the promising salary and position it offered. My father, still employed and holding a senior position in the company, maintained a close friendship with the founder and CEO. As it turned out, Rita's real name was familiar to me because of its commonality, rendering my attempts to identify her fruitless through online searches. Her private nature and the fact that I had never attended any work events with my father or husband contributed to my lack of recognition. Rita had noticed my husband at one such event, leading to her instant infatuation with him. A few months ago, Rita managed to track down my husband. Despite his marital status, she propositioned him, and he, unfortunately, agreed. This marked the inception of an extramarital affair, which they discreetly tried to keep under wraps. However, somehow, Rita's father, who is also my dad and my husband's employer, discovered the affair. Naturally, it created a substantial mess. As any respectable person would, Rita's father was infuriated by his daughter's choice to become involved with a married man, especially one of his employees. He demanded an immediate end to the affair, but Rita, fueled by her love for my husband, refused to comply. Consequently, she was kicked out of her home, and my husband, in an attempt to shield her, brought her to our place. A few days later, their boss contacted my dad and disclosed the entire affair. It was a relief to see someone with a sense of concern, as until then both my dad and husband seemed dismissive of the severity of the situation. Following this revelation, their boss urged my dad to find a resolution to the predicament. He even offered promotions to both my husband and dad if they could convince Rita to end the affair and return home. Despite the enticement, Rita remained steadfast in her refusal to abandon my husband. Consequently, my husband brought her to my dad's place last night, the only perceived haven. My dad, bound by the fact that Rita was his boss's daughter, felt obliged to take them in. As my dad explained this surreal situation to me, I struggled to comprehend the gravity of it all. Not only was my husband cheating on me, but now my dad was aiding his cheating son-in-law and his mistress, all because his job was on the line. The sheer awfulness of the situation left me in disbelief. It felt like I was an insignificant figure to both of them, taken for granted. Today, I ended up sobbing for hours, clueless about my next steps. Despite their actions, they remained the two most crucial men in my life. Accepting that they had betrayed me in such a manner was a challenge. The entire day, I felt miserable, but now I'm determined to overcome this. It might sound petty, but that's my current state of mind. I want to inflict more pain on them than they've caused me and ensure they comprehend the magnitude of their mistake. I have a specific plan in mind, but it carries the potential to tarnish their reputations irreversibly. If I ask my old neighbor to capture a few pictures of the three of them together, I'm confident she'd oblige. My husband, as far as I know, hasn't secured his laptop with a password since he's never felt the need to hide anything. Although this might have changed in recent months, it's not a significant concern, and with some effort, I can likely gain access. Contemplating the idea of sending a mass email to all his coworkers, revealing the truth about him and their boss's daughter. Admittedly, it's a petty and low move, but it's what I currently want to do. With no hopes of repairing my relationship with my husband or my dad, seeking revenge seems like a reasonable course of action. So, would I be the one in the wrong if I proceeded with sending out that mass email to inform all their coworkers of the truth? Update 1: I took the plunge. It's been a day since I sent out the email, and things have been utterly chaotic, not just for my husband, but for my dad and myself as well. I enlisted my neighbor to do some investigating, and she managed to procure a few pictures of the three of them, my dad, my husband, and Rita, gathered around the coffee table, engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument. It unquestionably signaled that something was amiss, and that was all the confirmation I needed. So, I composed an email summarizing the situation and sent it out a day ago. Fortunately, my husband's laptop wasn't password protected, making it a breeze to access his email. I was somewhat terrified about the potential repercussions, knowing this would lead to serious consequences. My fears were validated the next day when my dad called me and vehemently criticized me for my actions. He informed me that both he and my husband had been summoned by the company and were likely to face significant trouble, both legal and otherwise. By then, virtually everyone in the company and even their business associates were aware of the situation. The news had spread rapidly among their coworkers, and to be honest, I didn't mind. I conveyed to my dad that they deserved it and hung up, subsequently refusing to answer any further calls from him. I later learned that the previous evening, an older man, presumably Rita's father, had shown up at my dad's house. This visit led to intense screaming and shouting, culminating in Rita being forcefully removed from the house while vehemently protesting. Neither my dad nor my husband attempted to intervene. They merely observed as she was taken away. Shortly afterward, more arguments ensued, and then my husband left as well. I assume he's probably staying with a friend or at a hotel since he hasn't returned home. For his own sake, he better not show up. I don't feel particularly warm or welcoming towards him. He hasn't called or texted yet, so I presume he knows he messed up and is staying away out of shame. Well, good for him. Update 2. I miscalculated, thinking my husband had any sense of shame. It's been a week since he left, and today, he returned not to apologize but to save money, unwilling to waste it on a hotel when he had a house. He showed up a few hours ago, and upon seeing him through the intercom, I informed him that I wouldn't let him in. He became infuriated, claiming it was his house too, insisting I had to let him in whether I wanted to or not. Truthfully, this wasn't his house, it was mine. It was a wedding gift from my parents, and he had no right to set foot here after what he had done to me. When I asserted this, he attempted manipulation, asserting that I owed him because I was the reason he was currently unemployed. According to him, I had to compensate for it. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. He was solely responsible for ruining his own professional life by choosing to have an affair with his boss's daughter. I hadn't advised him on that matter. He continued arguing for a while, but eventually, he grew upset and resorted to banging on my door like a madman. While it did make me slightly uneasy, it solidified my decision not to open the door. I warned him that if he didn't cease, I'd call the police, leading to more significant trouble for him. This threat seemed to make him stop. However, for the next 15 minutes or so, he unleashed a torrent of horrible threats, sounding utterly deranged. I recorded the entire rant, realizing it could potentially assist in the upcoming divorce proceedings. I initiated the divorce process a couple of days ago and planned to serve him as soon as possible. Hence, I saw no reason to engage in further arguments. Once again, I insisted that he leave my property, threatening to involve the police if he persisted. Eventually, he finally left. I have no idea where he went, and frankly, I don't care enough to find out. After everything that transpired, he doesn't deserve any mercy or kindness from me. As for my dad, he hasn't reached out since our last phone call, and I hope it stays that way. If my mom were alive today, she would likely have set him straight. Unfortunately, I don't have her support now, but I'll navigate through this on my own. Update 3. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and approximately a week ago, I officially served my husband with the divorce papers. He had been staying with a friend, managing to keep everything under wraps from his parents. However, the truth couldn't stay hidden any longer, as he had to explain my absence in his life and the reason behind his move. His family, shocked by the revelations, reached out to me to apologize for his actions and offer their condolences. It was a kind gesture, and his father assured me that he would be out of my life. They expressed their commitment to ensure he wouldn't cause me any further trouble. I interpret this as their intention to prevent him from contesting the divorce and interfering with the settlement. It's comforting that they are looking out for me and making amends for his reprehensible behavior. It's a stark contrast to the way my father is treating me. In the last couple of days, my father has completely cut me out of his life and publicly announced on social media that he has severed all ties with me. This development has been particularly hard to digest. While I might have anticipated some negative consequences after tarnishing his reputation and career, it's especially heartbreaking when it comes from my father. Despite knowing the truth, he refuses to acknowledge his wrongdoing and portrays me as the antagonist in this situation, intensifying the emotional toll. He had the option to prioritize his daughter, but regrettably, that wasn't his initial choice, leading us to our current situation. It's unfortunate, and I'm certain that my late mother would have been devastated by these events. However, if she were still alive, perhaps none of this would have unfolded. Despite the challenges, I am grateful for the unwavering support of my neighbor and friend. They have proven to be the most emotionally supportive companions during these trying times. Their consistent check-ins serve as a reminder that while my father may not demonstrate love, there are people who genuinely care about me, and that, in itself, is sufficient to keep me going. Update 4. Hey everyone! It's been a month since I initiated the divorce proceedings, and thankfully, my in-laws kept their promise to ensure my husband didn't contest the divorce. I'm not sure how they pulled it off, but I appreciate their efforts. However, despite their intervention, my husband found another way to harass me. Last night, he called me from an unfamiliar number, catching me off guard. I answered, not expecting it to be him. To my dismay, he unleashed a barrage of expletives, hurling every derogatory term imaginable. In those initial moments, I was stunned, struggling to believe that this was happening. He seemed intoxicated, slurring his words. Once I grasped the situation, I promptly ended the call and blocked that number. However, he proceeded to text me from another number, presumably a friend's, and send a lengthy message filled with errors but still legible. In the text, he expressed that I deserved everything that had happened to me. He went further, mocking the fact that my father seemed to have abandoned me, emphasizing that if even my dad didn't want me, it was unlikely any husband would. The text continued with him ridiculing every aspect of my being, from my appearance to the way I spoke, expressing his intense dislike and wishing the worst for me. This barrage of insults devastated me. The man I had loved and been married to was now intentionally causing me emotional harm. I couldn't shake off the terrible things he had said, especially because there was some truth in them. My father had indeed distanced himself from me, and there was little I could do to change that reality. Even my husband had followed suit, leaving me with a profound loss of faith in men and love. Despite forwarding the hurtful text to his parents and seeking their intervention, I couldn't escape the harsh reality of my situation. It became clear that therapy might be the only path to healing and regaining my sense of self. I've begun researching therapists nearby, striving to redirect my focus and energy into my work. Though the road ahead seems challenging, I remain optimistic that surrounding myself with supportive loved ones will help me through this difficult time. I'm hopeful that things will eventually improve. Stay tuned for more stories from our channel.